Now that we understand how definitions need to work and that they need to be, or they better not be too broad, they better not be too narrow, and they certainly better not be both too broad and too narrow, we want to figure out how you go about deciding if a definition is good, how you test the definition. And basically, you go about trying to show that it's either too narrow or too broad. And let's talk about the process here of testing definitions. And you might say definitions are tested by counter examples. Now the question is, what is a counterexample? And you say a counterexample to a definition is a case that satisfies one side without satisfying the other. That is, it's an example of something that the definiens, the right side, the thing doing the defining, is true of, but the left side isn't, or vice versa. That is, it's an example showing that the definition is too broad or showing that the definition is too narrow. But it's actually coming up with a concrete kind of example. And in the absence of this kind of example, we're going to decide that the definition is adequate. We're going to look at it, we're going to think about it, but keep in mind, if you can find one counterexample, you end up showing that the definition is not good, is inadequate. So let's consider the definition. Dog equals, by definition, a small animal. Bad definition, right? And the idea is that this is way, way, way too broad. We can see that there are a lot of small animals that aren't dogs. But to test the definition, to show the definition is bad, what we need to do is come up with an example of something where the definiens is true, that is, something that's a small animal, but it's not a dog. How would we do that? Think about any kind of small animal. A squirrel, right, is a small animal, and it's not a dog. So a squirrel by itself is a counterexample to the definition that we're considering. Dog means, equals, by definition, a small animal. So that's what we're going to go about looking for in trying to test definitions. And remember, our procedure above tells us that we're going to think about it, and if we can't find any counterexamples, we're going to have to figure that we have a pretty good definition. So now what I want to do is I want us to turn to doing some examples, just to get used to the idea of trying to test the definition, trying to find counterexamples. So we're going to consider a bunch of bad definitions, and we're going to provide counterexamples. First, we're going to say whether they're too broad or too narrow. In fact, let me switch pages for you. We have 9 examples. Take out that document again. You'll do it in there. You'll write down the answers. First, tell me if, in each case, is that definition too broad? Is it too narrow? Is it both? And in that case, give a counterexample that shows that it's too broad or shows that it's too narrow. If it's both, you're going to have to give 2 counterexamples. So do that and post that in. You will post that as your assignment for this week in the appropriate section in assignments on Blackboard.